everyone, it's Darby from rejoiceandcreate.com, and I wanted to show you this card today. Now, this is an unusual card. It's kind of quirky, and the basis of this card is actually a trick that we used to do. It was an optical illusion to make the kid figure out how the card was made, but I would have never thought to change it into a greeting card until I saw MayMay at MayMay and she made a beautiful card, and actually you can do many different sizes once you find out how to make the base card. And this one's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it'll fit into a standard envelope, but when they get it, the center kind of stands up a little bit on its own. Now it may, if you're shipping it, it may flatten down a bit, but it kind of has a desire to come up a little bit, so it makes a really wonderful display for your recipient. Now this one is my birthday version, and I pulled out some birthday stamps, the Label Me Pretty stamp set, and I used the Sweet Soiree paper pack, and I got the Make-A-Wish stamp from the Happy Birthday Gorgeous, as well as the You Look Gorgeous on the back. Now this label, or what I used to make my background for my sentiment that stands up, was actually the Lots of Labels framelets, and I used the largest one, the second largest one, and I'll show you how to cut those, even though I'm not using those for the Father's Day version. But I went ahead and cut out a cake from the Sweet Soiree paper pack as well, and I think it just makes a beautiful display and makes a beautiful card. You could put another sentiment here. You could certainly sign it on the back as well. But when they pull that one out, how unusual will that look, and what a nice celebration that would be. Now I also made a Mother's Day version, and this one was made out of the Petal Garden paper pack. Now this one is the Calypso Coral base, and I used the Lots of Labels on this as well, the Whisper White, and I pulled out the Happy Mother's Day and the You Are Amazingly Amazing from a retired stamp set, but you use whatever you have on hand that will fit. And I just used a punch from that same paper pack to stabilize the back of it. And all these flowers were just cut out from one of the papers in the Petal Garden paper pack. So it's a lot of fun to make, and they are a little bit unusual, but they will still mail in the standard envelope for a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card. So the first thing you need is a cardstock base that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm using Smoky Slate for the next one. Now you'll see on this one I only matted 2 of the corners, and for the bigger mat you just need 2 pieces of paper that are 2 inches by 2 5/8 of an inch. Now if you want to mat the small ones as well, you'll need 2 additional papers that are 2 inches by 1 1/8 of an inch. Now for the mat layer and for the sentiment layer that stand up, I used the Lots of Labels framelets, and what I did was I cut the colored one out of the largest framelit, and the second largest was my sentiment layer, the white layer. In this case, it was the Whisper White. And then I lined this up on my trimmer at 2 inches. So this was 2 inches across, and I just cut that one down. And the sentiment layer, I just lined up at 1 3/4 of an inch. So this is only 1 3/4 of an inch, and then you can layer them together. But for the masculine version, I thought I'd just go ahead and do something that was a little bit less curvy, perhaps. So for the mat layer, I used a piece of cardstock that was 4 3/4 by 2 inches, and I just cut off the corner by measuring from the corner to 3/4 of an inch both ways, and just cut it across to the marks on both sides. And the mat layer is 1 3/4 of an inch by 4 1/4 of an inch. And I did the same thing. I measured from that corner 3/4 of an inch both ways and just cut it right off. And it makes a nice matted layer for our sentiment for a little bit more masculine looking card. Now you'll also need a little bit of Whisper White for the sentiment that's going to bridge the gap in the card, and I'm using Whisper White. And then you'll need a little bit of color for the background, and because this pattern paper had Calypso Coral as well as the Smoky Slate, I'm going to use a little Calypso Coral to bridge the gap in there too. Because what I thought I'd do is use the Truly Tailored stamp set, and I'm going to use the You're a Fox in place of the more feminine looking label. And I'm also going to use the Wishing You a Dapper Day, although I'm not going to use the mustache on that one. And then for my embellishment, because I'm using the You're a Fox stamp, is I'm going to use one of the Foxy Friends, just the little sitting fox on there, to make an embellishment. So let's see how it looks. All right, so the first thing I'm going to show you is the base for the card, and it actually is it's interesting. It's kind of an optical illusion, and that's why we used to use it for a critical thinking exercise for the kids. But what you do is you just take that 5.5 by 4 1/4 layer, and for a template, what I did was I scored it right in half from this side at 2 1/8, and that gave me the center line for the lengthwise version. And then what I did was I went halfway on one side of that. So this is 5.5 inches, and halfway would be 2 3/4, and I made another mark. And then on the bottom side, these are just really whatever you like. So what I did is I went 1 1/4 inches in from each side and only brought those up to the fold line. So this is the template for what we're going to do. Now, I didn't mark it all out. I actually just put it on my cutter and cut it, and I'll show you how I did that in just a minute. But how we make the card is actually kind of a twisting motion. And they call it an impossible card because it looks impossible for the pieces to come where they do, but that's only because of the way it's twisted. Now, I like having that larger side in the left front, and I'll bring this one back just so you can see it. So what we do with that is actually, I twist this one up and twist that back, and then pull that up. And that's what makes it look like it can't possibly fit, and that's what makes it a good critical thinking exercise too, because you have to figure out where this one piece came from when there's 2 small spots in there. But it really makes a fun base for a card, and I would not have thought of it if it hadn't been for MayMay. And I'll link her website below, and I'll link the video below, because she shows you different sizes as well. I just like to do this size because it's one of the favorite sizes that I like to do. But really, once you learn the way to measure it, you can do it with any size cardstock. So let's go ahead and do that with my smoky slate, and we'll walk you through the steps. All right, so I have my 5.5 by 4 1/4 inch cardstock, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually make a line down in the center portion of my cardstock, so I know where the center is. I guess hot dog style is what you say. So half of 4 1/4 is 2 1/8. So line up that with the short side up at 2 1/8. And what I did was I just, in the center portion of it, made a score. Just so I know where the center was and I know where to bring my other lines to. All right, so let's turn it around on one of the long sides. We're going to put it halfway down at 2 3/4, because this is the 5.5 side. So we're gonna cut halfway, just up to that score line at the halfway mark. So go just up to the score line. Oop, I think I need to get my blades changed. But hopefully we can make it through here. All right, so we have halfway on this side. Oh yeah, see, look at that cut. I'll change them out, but we'll suffer through it for right now. What I'm doing is turn it around now so that half mark is down. And on this other long side, we're going to make a mark at not make a mark, but we're going to cut at 1 1/4. On this side, and only up to that score mark in the middle. So 1 1/4 on this side, and then 1 1/4 on this side, and I'll just use that end to line it up. Okay, just a bit more. All right, so we have halfway across on this side cut to the middle, and we have 1 1/4 inch on both this side cut to the center. That center score line that we did. All right, now I made a little tick there, so let me just trim that off quickly. As I said, I need to replace my blades, so it's looking a little rough, and I apologize. All right, but I just wanted to show you how to do this because it's so much fun. All right, so again, I like to have that big part in the front, so what I'm going to do is bend this one up, and this one twists over, and then I'm going to twist that one back, and that's what gives you the base. So the next thing I'm going to do is to glue on my pieces of designer series paper. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is to make my labels for the front and the back, and that will help stabilize it, because as you can see, the way it is right now, it's a little bit wobbly because of the way the card is designed. And you can use anything to bridge that to stabilize it. You can use a label, a banner, any die cuts you have, you know, certainly embellishments are a bit stiffer and longer, you can place across there. Because my fox is a photopolymer stamp, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my piercing mat. And let me go ahead and stamp him in Calypso Coral. Oh, he's so cute. I'm going to just give him some eyes and a nose out of Memento Tuxedo Black. And these are the ones I think match it, so we'll just go for it. Let me move him a little bit so I can get him lined up. Oop, a little bit smeared on one eye, but we're going to go with it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and cut him out by hand, and I'll be right back. I'm also going to take a moment and to stamp my You Are a Fox in Smoky Slate. And while I'm at it, for my back sentiment, I'm going to stamp the Happy Father's Day in Calypso Coral, so I can punch it out with the Everyday Label Punch. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these onto the Calypso Coral, and then I'm just going to cut a border around them. So I've cut out the fox, I've matted and cut out by hand the little bit bigger layer of Calypso Coral around my sentiment and my Happy Father's Day. And now what I'm going to do is to stamp the part that will go onto my sentiment that stands up. And I'm going to use this part. And I'm going to stamp the Wishing You a Dapper Day, but I don't want the mustache. So I'll take a Post-it note and just cover that over and ink it up. Make sure I get it all. Alright, let me remember to take the Post-it note off, and then I'll try my best I can to line it up a little bit onto this side over here. Wishing You a Dapper Day, and that gives me some room now to put my little fox on. Let me go ahead and glue this onto my matte layer. And if you're mailing this, you might want to use a little bit stronger adhesive. I just want to do this to make it quick. Because actually it does go very quick. Alright, let me go ahead and put my little fox on. Oh, that's so cute. Actually, this time I'll go ahead and use the Extreme Tombow. I don't want him to fall off. And he's going to sit right over here. Now, you can still mail it. Because this is 2 inches wide, it will not go beyond the level of the card. So you will be able to mail this in the standard envelope that goes to a 5.5 by 4 1/4 card. If you go beyond it, you'll just have to make, especially on the top part, it'll just make it a little bit wider. You might have to make a personalized or a custom envelope for it with your envelope punch board. But that's not a problem if that's what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this on, and I'm actually going to put the glue on here so I don't overlap, because these ends will overlap a little bit on this side. So let me go ahead and put that there and that there. I'm not gluing all the way to the line because my sentiment is not quite as wide, so it still has the ability to bend over. If I made it exact thing, it wouldn't bend up very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center it in that panel, and I'm going to put the top of my sentiment right at the top of the cardstock panel. Okay. Now, if you don't want to cut the edges at an angle, you can use a corner rounder punch. You can use a decorative corner punch. You can use any type of border punch around the top. Really, there's a lot you can do, which makes this very fun. All right, the next step is for us to put this on, and when I just backed it with one piece of Calypso Coral and I cut it. If you were to back it with a label, I actually, on this label, I cut the mat vertically. So I pulled these part off, set it just a little bit so it looked like it would be a mat. Now, because it didn't look very pretty on the back, I just punched another White Whisper white one and put it on the back before I put it on. But because I cut this out by hand, I don't need to do that one. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue it on both ends where it will straddle that gap. Now, so I don't skew the card wrong, I'm going to line it up on the grid paper so I make sure that the card is square. And then I know that I'm putting it in the right spots. And I'll go ahead and use a little bit of Tombow on this one on both ends, because that gives me a chance to squish it around to get it in the right spot. All right, so just go ahead and I centered it from side to side and pulled it almost out to the bottom, maybe a little bit inside where the outline of the card would be, and just made sure my card was lined up on the grid so it was still square. All right, hold that down for a second so it gets really strong. All right, now we'll do the same thing for this one on the back. I'll turn it around, make sure I'm squared up, and if I squared up that first one, more than likely I'm squared up for the second one. Move that forward a little bit. And again, we'll just use a little Tombow on each end so we can bridge the gap and stabilize the card. All right, same with this one. Put it right side up. And now we'll just straddle the gap again. And let me just hold that in a minute, but you can certainly put another sentiment down here or some more embellishments there. You can use the back of this to write your message and sign it. It just ends up being such a fun card to give and receive. Now, if you look at the back of this, you'll notice because that one piece of cardstock in the middle of this that's holding my sentiment up, you'll see a bit of an edge here and here. Now you can cut another piece of the paper the same size to cover it over, but you don't want to get it too bulky down here because if you're mailing it, it will have to sit down this way. So I think it looks pretty good right here. You might put a piece of washi tape down each side just to make it look intentional and then sign it in the middle. But really, once you get the card shape down and get the base down, it is so much fun. Now I just want to give it a little bit more embellishment. I'm going to use some of my neutral candy dots, which I've had for a while because I haven't used them all up yet. And I'm going to go ahead and use the ones that are gray. And I'll just put it on my back layer here. Actually, let me put one over here. What a fun card this would be to give to your father or your husband, which actually is going to my husband for Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, wishing you a dapper day, and certainly I think he's a fox. So before I go, let me show you the base one more time. And now that the card is all made, you can see how it came out. Remember, let me move this over just a little bit. And this one started as a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The first thing that we did was scored it in the center portion of it halfway across the short side, which is at 2 1/8. Just scored it right in the middle part of it. Doesn't have to be exact, just have to know where that middle part is. Turn it to one long side and cut halfway down to the score line, halfway across the card. So this is 5 1/2. We cut it 2 3/4 just down to the score line. Turn it to the other side. This cut is not as exact. This cut needs to be exact, but these two just have to be the same. I liked it at 1 1/4, so I lined this one up at 1 1/4 and cut down to the halfway point. And then on my other side of the trimmer, I lined this one up at 1 1/4 and cut halfway down. Once you have that, all you have to do is twist it and fold it, and that's how you have your card base. The biggest thing is just to make sure when you stabilize it by putting whatever was bridging these gaps, just make sure your card base is square. So that's our project today, a very unique card. I would call it a twist and fold easel card. MayMay called it an impossible card because of the way the base is made. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. It helps my channel grow. If you need more information, please go to rejoiceandcreate.com. And as always, until we meet again, I hope your days are blessed. Bye!